Welcome back. Today we're starting our unit in biology, which is the study of life. Bio means life. Ology, study of. So we are studying life. And what is more important than life? What's more important than living? Think about it. What does it mean to be alive? There's certain things living things have that non-living things don't have. For example, we talked about in class COVID-19, that virus is not considered to be alive. It is not living. Even though it can replicate and it spreads throughout the human population, it is not alive because it doesn't have a few things that are considered to be characteristics of life. For example, it is not made of cells. So cells are the basic units of life, and viruses are not cells. Bacteria are cells. So if you've ever had pneumonia, for example, or if you've had strep throat, those are caused by bacteria. So if you go to the doctor will prescribe antibiotics. So anti means against, bio means life, so anti-life, because they're meant to kill the bacteria, which is alive. And in the process, sometimes it kills your own cells. So this is why you have side effects a lot of times when you take antibiotics, because they're killing some of your own cells. There's also a lot of problems with using antibiotics because bacteria become immune to them. They can become resistant to antibiotics. And this is one of the biggest problems in medicine today, is the overprescription of antibiotics. Because the bacteria become immune and they evolve into resistant bacteria. Think of like MRSA. So these bacteria are becoming more powerful because they're not being affected by antibiotics. So the more the bacteria is exposed to antibiotics, the more it is going to change and evolve so it is resistant to antibiotics. And if you get bacteria that is completely resistant to all antibiotics, then no antibiotics will work at all, and obviously it could end up dying from bacterial infection. So bacteria, though, is different than viruses. Viruses are not living. They cannot reproduce on their own. The viruses like COVID-19 needs to get into animal cell. An animal cell. It needs to get into a host to replicate. And once it gets into the host cells, it can make more viruses, and it kills the cells, the human cells, and spreads to more cells. And can really spread throughout, like the respiratory system is one of the biggest systems that it affects, but it also causes problems with the circulatory system. But that is actually a virus. And viruses are not alive. Even though viruses have some characteristics of living things, they seem to be alive. They don't have all the characteristics. So living things have to have certain characteristics. And the first one is they have to be made of cells. So cells are the basic units of life. And you are made of trillions of cells. And those cells are made of atoms. But the cells are the basic units of living things. There's nothing smaller than a cell that is still considered to be alive. And there are really two types of living things. There's unicellular, which means it has one cell, like bacteria. Bacteria is one cell, made of one cell. Multicellular is the other type. Multi means many. So these are things that have many cells, like us. We have trillions of cells. It's interesting, though, if you counted up all the cells in your body, most of them would actually be bacteria. It wouldn't even be your cells, it'd be bacterial cells. Because your intestine, your gut, has lots and lots of bacteria. In fact, it outnumbers human cells. But they're so small, they're way smaller than human cells, that they only take up about 3 to 5 pounds of your body weight. But that is bacteria, so we depend on bacteria. some of that bacteria in your intestines and your gut is related to your immune system. And researchers are doing a lot of studies on the bacteria in your intestines, and they're finding out that the more different types you have, the more diverse the bacteria, the healthier the system is. So, and they're showing that there could be a relationship between psychological illnesses or some psychological problems, such as depression, anxiety, that can be associated with the lack of diversity in the bacteria in your intestines. So it's an interesting study, the fact that there's such a the relationship between the mind and the gut. So the first thing, got to be made of cells. Second thing, they must be able to reproduce on their own. They're going to be able to divide, reproduce, right, on their own. They can't have to depend on a host to do it. The viruses can reproduce, but they have to depend on an animal cell to do it. Whereas bacteria can multiply without depending on a host. So that's the second one. And we're going to talk about different types of reproduction later. Third one, they must be able to grow and develop. So they must be able to increase in size as growth, and developing is more maturing. So maturity. Number four, they must be able to respond to their environment. So must be able to respond to the environment. So there's a stimulus, usually the cause of a reaction, and then there's a response. That's the reaction itself. So stimulus and response. So for example, in our case, if it gets very hot, like it's been 110 degrees, you go outside and you go for a run, you're very, very hot. Start breathing heavy, start sweating, sweat. Why do you sweat? It's your body's way of keeping you cool, because when you sweat, the water in your skin, the sweat on your skin evaporates. And when it evaporates, it cools the surface of your skin off. So that's called evaporative cooling. That's one way you have responded to the stimulus of hot weather. Okay, what else do living things have to do? I think that's it. What else do living things have to have? Well, they have to be able to obtain and use energy. Energy. How do we get our energy? We get our energy from the food we eat. How do plants get their energy? They perform photosynthesis. It means they can use the sunlight to make sugar, which is glucose. And that glucose gives us energy. So glucose has got a lot of energy in it. Think of glucose as like a $100 bill. $100 bill. This is a fake one. Teachers don't have a real $100 bill to flash around on the camera. Kidding, please. $100 bill. This is glucose. Let's say glucose is packed with energy. A lot of money in a $100 bill. For me, for teachers, it's a lot of money. For a millionaire, it's not much. But we're going to say as a teacher and maybe as a student, middle school student, $100 is a lot of money. Lots of money, lots of energy packed in this $100 bill. So this, if you think of this as glucose, this is glucose. Now, I want to get energy. I want to go to 7-Eleven and get some Twinkies and a Pepsi, let's say. Even though I shouldn't, but there's a lot of sugar in Twinkies and Pepsi. It gives you energy, fast energy. You use it up very fast, you crash after you have it, but need some energy, short-term energy, so that's what I want. But if I go to 7-Eleven with this $100 bill, they won't take it. They'll say, no, too much energy. Just like your cells. They can't use glucose directly. Glucose cannot be used directly by your cells. It's too much energy. It's like if you were to fill up your gas tank in your car. You fill it all up to the top. And if you burned all that gas up in 1 second, too much energy. The car would just explode with all that energy. But when you use gasoline in the car, it's slowly burned. And that powers the car, gets the car to move. So this glucose is like the whole full gas tank. You can't use the full gas tank at once. It's like the cells cannot use glucose at one time. Too much. Like 7-Eleven can't use the $100 bill. So what do I have to do? I have to go to the ATM machine to break this $100 bill down into singles. So I'm going to take this to the ATM machine. All right, I'll come back. I'll be back in a minute. I've got to go get some cash. Get some, break it down. I think I got short change because I didn't get 100 singles, so I got 3, but this will work for now. Yeah. Okay, so ATM machine. This is what I got from the ATM. Singles. These now I can use. I can go to 7-Eleven and use these to get my Pepsi and Twinkies. So what did I do? I took this glucose and I broke it down. Should be 100 of these, obviously. Don't have 100 to show you. Pretend there's 100 of these here. Broke them down to this. Think of these singles as ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. We're going to talk a lot about it, so don't have to memorize it right now, but ATP is the energy molecule of the cell. This is energy the cells can use. So they can use this. They can use this one. They can use this. 7-Eleven will take these. So glucose, we get this from the food we eat, but we need to break this down into a molecule that our cells can use for energy. And that molecule is called ATP. Stands for adenosine triphosphate. And we'll talk, we're going to get into learning about the structures and everything later. For now, just know we need energy. All living things need to obtain energy and use energy. So that's an example. Glucose, we burn glucose down into ATP. Now, that process then, taking high energy glucose into smaller forms of ATP, is called cellular respiration. That's what it is. So cellular respiration is really breaking down glucose into ATP. Energy we can use. That's what it is. That's what happens in your cells. And this happens in the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. So that's where you get your energy from. And you use ATP, energy molecule of the cell. So these are some things that living things must have.